exclusive. Like they say, they do a certain practice. They do a certain practice which is associated with keeping one particular sect of Buddhism pure, they say. So that means that this is found in the Tibetan tradition. So it means that this group doesn't like any other of the Tibetan Buddhist traditions. It just only one tradition needs to be kept pure, and they don't want any kind of exchange, which is very wrong. I mean, like, this is like the idea, like, you can learn from so many different systems. Open-mindedness needs to be there. Anyway, this group is very much characterized by that kind of cult-like attitude, and since His Holiness speaks out against them, this group demonstrates against His Holiness, oftentimes. And I saw this very cute video. When His Holiness came to England, there were quite a few people demonstrating, and oftentimes nowadays they're Westerners, because they come new to Buddhism, they don't know what's going on. They meet these people from this kind of cult-like tradition, and then they hear His Holiness is talking against. Actually, His Holiness doesn't. He said you can do it if you want, but just be aware of the dangers. Anyway, so the point is that there's one footage where His Holiness goes past these protesters, and he's so sincere. I mean, he sincerely respects people. And so he just walks past them and says hi to everyone. And they can't help it. They all go, you know, like, and then they go, whoa, Dalai Lama, Dalai Lama. But as he walks past, very, sincerely, they all go, So it's very beautiful. Like, if someone shows you this respect, you can also show respect back, and then you can disagree with them. Right? Okay. So this is just something I thought was nice to mention here, important to mention. So also in this context, also His Holiness mentions the need for reasoning. It is very important to be skeptical and to reason, to use our own analytical capacity, because, well, we have this incredible mind, we have this incredible intelligence, which our intelligence, due to our very complicated brain, we can analyze well, we can be very critical, and this is important in Buddhism. This is important in particular with regard to the philosophy. So the scientific part kind of sets forth the reality, but then when one goes into the philosophy, one takes the philosophical part, reasoning is very much needed. Reason is very much encouraged. So to always reason well. Yeah, so very much part of, and I don't think I need to say that in Israel. Why? Because the Jewish tradition is very much part of, I mean, in the Orthodox tradition, of course, there's all this reasoning. There's all this analysis, this debate, and it's become part of the culture, which is why Israeli people do it naturally, which is great. This is why Buddhism is very appropriate for Israelis, or for people who have a Jewish background, who live culturally a Jewish life, because there's so much part of it. Yeah? And again, of course, it's not about anyone becoming Buddhist, but taking the parts that are helpful. That's why it's always a joy, because everyone is, and sometimes people ask me, oh, wasn't that really rude, someone? And I love it. I don't think it's rude when someone goes, no, I disagree. We do that all the time with our teacher. We were encouraged to do it. I mean, for 17 years, we were like, you know, the moment you go like, no, I don't think so, teacher. You're respectful towards your teacher, but it may seem like the way you say is like, no, I disagree. And in like this class situation, you may actually go debate back and forth. The students say, no, that doesn't make sense. It's not disrespectful. It's seen as a good sign, as like a sign of really doing something with the teaching. So I found Israelis do that too. They're very straightforward. I like that. I don't think that's rude at all. So I encourage this. If you just feel like bursting, like, oh no, that doesn't make sense, go ahead and say it. Very good. Okay. So here he says that it's important to analyze anything, because even the Buddha himself, sometimes he didn't teach the deepest truth to someone, because to that person it may have been overwhelming. So when you talk about, I mean, just hearing the word selflessness, people think there is no self. It's very easy to misunderstand that. Actually, the point is just to deny a certain type of self, but to establish a self that does exist. So if you deny something that actually exists, you're in trouble. And if you believe in something that doesn't exist, you're also in trouble. But then how to find the middle? So it's very hard to do that. And without reasoning, without constant kind of analysis, when you study this, it's very difficult to get the ground, the middle. And even the Buddha himself, he taught things that cannot be taken literally. He taught them to a certain person. right? For the time being, that's what they were ready to hear, until later on, of course, he continued and teach something else. So it's important to understand not everything the Buddha said can be taken literally. So how can we understand what is to be taken literally? Use our own mind. That's the only way. Okay? All right. Okay. Then here, faith and respect, as I already mentioned it, that the story about Sweden. Okay. The Buddhist framework. Okay, we don't probably need to go about those. Framework, you get the whole thing. So here, so this speaks about, again, the view, the profound view, and then the path that takes you there. Again, you can read this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Unless you have a question about it, I'm happy to answer this. But we'll speak about this as we go along. So there's a certain view, and then there's something that's called a path. It's like something you apply. So there's a certain view, there's an understanding of that, and then you apply this or not, and you get a result. So Buddhism is all about results. As in, like, there's a destination, there's a goal, which is transformation. Transformation for what? That we don't suffer. That's the only reason. The reason the Buddha came forth was that he said, we are not supposed to suffer. Suffering is not natural. Right? I mean, we may disagree right now when we say, oh, it's part of life and it has some advantages. Of course it has advantages to overcome suffering. We suffer in order to then suffer less, to learn something. Right? We use suffering, as long as we have it, we use it in a skillful way to learn something, to grow. But the result is overcoming suffering. Right? So from a Buddhist point of view, we deserve to be happy. Everyone deserves to be happy. No one deserves to suffer. But most of our sufferings get created by our own mind. So how can we recognize what makes us suffer, and how can we transform it? So that's the whole psychology, if you like. I mean, in a way, I'd like to call Buddhism psychology. It's like, it's not about becoming a psychologist. It's about, recognizing the problem, applying the antidote, and be happier. Okay? So, therefore, this is what Buddhism talks about as the path, as in like the application, applying whatever is being explained. Okay, I think, it's time to take a break.
Is it 11 on
Oh, is the break at 11? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Wait, lunch at 12?
No, 12:30. We start at 9:30.
We can take a break now and lunch at 12?
What time is lunch? Is it 12 or 12:30? Yeah, okay. Because I remember in Yixian we started at 9 and we went until 12.
In Yixian it's different?
It's
Maybe
different.
it's the same here.
Okay. All right, we find out. So until then, allow me to go talking.
12:30.
At 12:30. Okay, so I have the break at 11. All right. Are you okay? Do you need a break? Okay? No? All right. Then we can just go on a little. Okay. So, then there's classifying Buddhist texts. You could do that on your own. And here, then the next chapter, which is chapter 4, His Holiness speaks of practicing Buddhism. So I've already talked about this, as in like, if you find something is beneficial, if you find there's something that makes sense, that is helpful, to apply it and leave the rest. That's it. Practicing Buddhism doesn't mean you practice everything. You practice whatever is appropriate. Not even a Buddhist practices everything. How can you? There's so much. And there's so many different levels. As like someone, the mind is so different. Each person has their own unique mind, their own unique problems. And so, different applications. It's a bit like when you do any kind of exercise. When you're an exercising person, you don't do all the exercises. You do what's most appropriate for your body. So likewise, you do what's most appropriate for your mind. Okay. So the word here in Tibetan is chö, as I said, which means to change or transform. And then there's a Sanskrit word. Chö is the Tibetan word, and then in Sanskrit it's dharma. And dharma means something that protects. So to protect the mind from that which is harmful, and to therefore to protect it from that which potentially causes suffering, which causes problems, sadness, and so forth. Okay, all right. So how can we transform? How can we transform? That's a good question, right? How can we transform? Well, no one can make us transform. No one can make us. We have to want to do it. So here, Thomas talks about like you can do in a classroom maybe for like a student who is very unruly by kind of threatening to punish them. You can maybe get them to be quiet, but that just works for a while, and it's just a threat, and it's not permanent. And so you can like have another person influencing you. In the end, it's totally one's own decision, one's own determination. So this is a little unique. It's different from other religious systems, from other spiritual or religious systems, that there's a great emphasis on one's own responsibility. I'm responsible. We ourselves are responsible. So this is kind of, I think it's quite big, but it's also very liberating, I find. It's all in my own hand. If I want to do it, I can do it. If I don't want to do it, well, I'll be the one experiencing the consequences, but it's up to me. Right? So no one else can do anything. It's a bit like, well, actually in everyday life, to some degree, it's the same. You know, I can go to a doctor, I can ask what's wrong with me, and the doctor may tell me, okay, these are the symptoms, this is the cause for the disease, here's the medicine. I still have to take it myself, right? And maybe a doctor could inject it. Okay, that also works. But I have to agree. No one can force me and have me. So likewise here with the idea of Buddhism, you may hear about, the Buddha sometimes is described as a physician, like a doctor, but not a doctor of the physical body, but of the mental body. So like a psychiatrist. Psychologist or a psychiatrist? I never know the difference. Psychiatrist, right? No? Psychologist. So the psychologist...
Psychiatrist gives medicine, he's a doctor. Psychiatrist gives medicine, he's a doctor. Psychologist does therapy.
A therapy. Okay, so psychologist. So a psychologist, the Buddha is like a psychologist. Just says, look, this is the cause. These are the symptoms. This is the cause. That's what you can do to remove it. Whether we do it or not is up to us, right? But we need to do it on our own. No one can do it for us. Wouldn't it be lovely if someone could do it for us, right? Just do whatever I like to do, and then everything will... That would be great. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Okay, so we need to do it ourselves. And then His Holiness, of course, talks about the need for an unbiased outlook. So to be critical, to be skeptical, but unbiased. Okay, so maybe, so far I used to think it's like this, but maybe it's not like that. To have that openness, right? That's seen as very important. To be open to the possibility. And then if one investigates it well enough and comes to the conclusion, no, doesn't make sense, well, at least one has been unbiased, one has been honest. Okay. All right. So, and he speaks about, initially we need doubt. Doubt is a good thing. Okay, to have this doubt. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. So preconceptions we may have had, to allow ourselves to doubt them. No matter how long we held these preconceptions, no matter our entire family holds this, no matter, everyone in society believes something, to allow the possibility of that. Okay. So that kind of doubt is good, and then one takes it from there. One then investigates, examines, and comes to whatever conclusion one comes to. All right. Then His Holiness also speaks about practice, daily practice. Like practicing on a daily basis is seen as good. If we really want to make a change, we want to transform, well, we should generate some kind of daily practice. And it doesn't have to be all day long, like impossible. We still have to live. And trust me, even those monks and nuns who live in like a retreat setting, they don't do this all day long. They still have to make food and, clean the room. There's still certain tasks you have to do. So it's not like you can do it. There's actually sometimes very little time spent. When you hear about the meditators, there are quite a few meditators around in Dharamsala, and sometimes we have the fortune to get teachings from them. Just recently received 1 month of amazing teachings by a great, great meditator there for 1 month, a little more than a month actually. And he said he only had 3 hours every day that he could actually spend on, reading the scriptures and really doing, because he's sick, he also has some physical problem. But actually what he meant was like formal practice of 3 hours. But in a way, of course, the idea is that one does this at all times. No matter what one does, to actually, in the back of one's mind, to always watch one's own mind. That's one of the most important things to practice, to be mindful. What am I thinking? See, there's always one part of your mind that goes, what am I thinking? What's going on right now? Why do I feel unhappy? That's always a good indication. Ooh, there's something going on. Let's check, right? Why am I not happy? What am I thinking right now? I'm angry. Okay, sometimes we don't catch the anger when it actually arises. We're already angry for half an hour or an hour, and suddenly, oh my God, what am I doing? Ah, interesting, anger. Okay, so what am I angry with? Look at the object of the anger, then trace it back. How did the anger arise? Why did it arise? What gave rise to it? That's the best way to get to know your own mind, right? And it's so fresh, so fresh. It's just started like half an hour ago. It's still pretty fresh. So what you learn here is just like giving you some kind of marks, like markers. This is how you can identify it. It allows you to recognize it. But the recognizing is very different to what you're taught. I think of it like, for example, as a surgeon. You know, when you learn surgery, initially no one gives you, like, you know, here you got a belly, just open up and see what happens. Maybe if the person is dead, yeah. But usually you're given like some kind of, or maybe a dead person, okay, you get a corpse, and then you can practice on the corpse, and you cut too much, all right. At least you see, I mean, you recognize it, you're taught, this is the liver, this is the kidney, this is this, right? And usually you have like these, nowadays you have these plastic models, right? Like you can actually take out the liver and the heart, and they're just plastic objects. So this is a bit like introducing the mind to us. And then, no, it doesn't matter. You can lie. It's okay. You can lie down. You can lie down. No problem. Please lie down if you need to. No problem. If you stretch your legs, don't worry about it. So, so the idea is that when you first there's just a model of it, but then you need to get the actual thing. So I can't see your anger. I can see anyone else's anger, right? I can go on, oh yeah, I know anger, my neighbor's always very angry. But that's not beneficial, because I can't do anything about their anger. It's only my own anger. So to look inwards is very important. To look, to be mindful. And then when we learn about the philosophy, okay, now I see. Oh, why is it destructive? The anger itself is not destructive so much, but what the anger makes us do. That's why I love the English word, I'm mad. Because we're really pretty mad. You know, we do mad things. We do crazy things when we're angry. We're embarrassed afterwards. We have to apologize. Because we do these weird things that we would have never done unless we were angry. Right? So anyway, when we're mad, we see it ourselves. We can recognize the destructive force of it, what it can potentially do. Hopefully we catch it before we are already doing. Yeah? And then we can also get to know it. Get to know it. Accept it. That's seen as very important. We have a tendency as Westerners, when we try to practice Buddhism, we are very judgmental. We're very judgmental. Oh, I'm angry again. I'm just such an angry person. No, from now on I will not be angry. You know, we're very hard with ourselves. Terribly hard. So I think the first part we need to learn is to be gentle. Be gentle with ourselves. And then not to be afraid. Okay, got all these funny minds, all these funny awarenesses. I look forward to getting to know them. So to not be afraid, whatever emotion is there, to not be sucked into it, but to look at it from the outside and watch it. Just watch it. Oh, how interesting. Look, fear. We are very scared of fear. So on top of the fear itself, the scariness of the fear itself, we're scared of the fear. Wow, great. Add a problem to a problem. Yeah. So instead of a fear arises, oh, there's fear. Let's just acknowledge. Where's the fear? Let's watch it. Because it's just a state of mind. It's not something solid. It's not a truck that's coming to overrun us. We believe that it is a truck. We believe it's something, because we believe it's something negative, we already put it in the negative category, so there's fear. No, look it, watch it. I mean, negative is relative, right? It's totally relative. If it helps me to learn, it's positive. Like a religion, a good or bad religion, it's depending on the person. For one person, this is a good religion. For another one, it's a harmful religion. It's not benefiting them. So likewise, even an emotion, if it helps me in that moment, then it can be positive. Yes.
Maybe it's because we identify ourselves with
Exactly.
it. I am angry. It's
Yes.
not anger. It's me.
Yes, very good.
I'm
That's
anger.
another reason. That's another reason. You're so right. I just learned the other day from Efrat when we drove to Yecham. She's learning French, and she told me in French they don't say I am angry. They say I have angry.
Wow.
We should train ourselves to say I have angry. I mean, we say I have anger, but we usually say I am angry. We very much identify with that, right? And I'm not saying, please don't think that I'm saying anger is good in general. No, no. In the long term, it does harm us. But the moment we go, oh, this is interesting. I'm angry. Let's watch your anger. The anger is gone anyway. You're going to keep the anger. But it's very important, what you also said, to identify it as just a consciousness that comes and goes. It's my anger, which implies I'm not my anger.
I'm here and the anger is here as well.
Yeah, exactly. It just happens to kind of squeeze in there. Yeah, and it's there right now, so let's watch it. Or fear, exactly, like the same thing. It's just a state of mind, really. And when you start looking at it, we make it solid by trying to ignore it, right? By not looking at it. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible. So the point is here that in order to practice can happen at all time. Like while we're sitting here, just watch your own mind. You can learn one part of your mind, you look at your own mind. What am I thinking? What am I doing? Right? Without judging. Just allow this. So this is part of daily practice. So you can spend, of course, time, or you should make some time every day to do your possibly meditations, if you would like to meditate, to just calm the mind, to watch the breathing and so forth. You can do that in an official setting, maybe do some prayers, etc. But it should be actually a 24 hours job. Well, sleeping is a little hard initially to do that, but even you sleep, you can make this positive. Just before you go to sleep, to have kind thoughts, compassionate thoughts, loving thoughts, then those last thoughts, they influence your sleep. So even your sleep becomes something constructive, actually, something calming. So you probably sleep better. Instead of a sleeping pill, have loving and kind thoughts, just relax. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so he speaks about meditation. You can read about this. And then how to study. So this also speaks about study, the importance of study. And again, this is something you can read. There's like a whole list of why it's beneficial. But most important is that study, it is intellectually initially. But that's the only way to access the information, through an intellectual kind of process. Are you feeling all right? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Through an intellectual process. So, and then of course, study is just a tool basically to gain an understanding of something and then to take it deeper from there. Yeah. So I guess we have lots of examples where we've done that. I'm thinking right away as I'm talking, I'm thinking of something that's become very much part of our deep kind of psyche, but unfortunately it's not something that's helpful. You know, when we were born, we didn't have a sense that our parents mess up. And our parents are responsible for our problems. We don't have that sense, right? And then as we grow up in the 21st century, then, you know, we may not ever have heard of Freud, but Freud is very much part of the modern society. And I'm not blaming Freud. I think Freud had amazing ideas. I mean, he's the founder of psychoanalysis. I mean, amazing. But we have a tendency of, focusing in on something. And then we're wondering, I have a problem. Okay, so where could that problem come from? We're on the right way. Very good. What is the cause of my problem? Okay, so, of course, we were brought up by so many causes and conditions. So many causes and conditions that give rise to who we were. We were born in a certain way, with a certain genetic material. We had both a mom and a dad. But we had teachers, we had classmates. There's a whole environment. But somehow we focus in on our parents. Oh, my parents, they messed up. So this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Okay, so we try very hard to find the origin in our mom and our dad. And then slowly, every time we have a problem, there's like, yeah, mom, thank you very much. It becomes innate, right? It becomes innate. I definitely know some people are very closely related to myself. So, like, they blame, I can say my sister, she's never going to listen to this anyway. So my sister, for example, who blames my mom for everything, right? And from a Buddhist point of view, there's so many causes and conditions, right? I mean, first of all, we were born to a specific person because of something accumulated in the past. Okay, that is debatable. But that is debatable. But nonetheless, you know. So, and then also our parents were not born to be parents. They didn't receive a special training in parenthood. You know, I mean, they read a few magazines maybe. And then everything changes every year. You know, what's good for your child this year is said to be horrible. You know, when my parents were, I mean, that's what the scientists told them to do. And nowadays they tell everyone is wrong. What did my mom know, right? And she did her best, she tried her best, but still it's like this innate sense she messed up. So it's a good example of where we intellectually, first we didn't have that sense, how slowly it grew into an innate sense. Mom, it's her fault. So we have a complicated relationship with our parents. Of course, I'm not saying it's all that. Sure, there may be other factors, but this is another factor we may maybe recognize in ourselves. That one reason we have a complicated relationship is that maybe, and I'm not saying it's like that, but as I grew up myself, I was part of that, and at some point I let go of it. But when I grew up myself, I was also like, oh yeah, because I had this mom, because she did this, because she scolded us all the time, she was so strict or whatever. Now I have this problem. Okay? But this is just not very constructive, and in the end it's just an obstacle because we're stuck in this, like what a person did wrong. It's almost like now you can't do anything because what's done is done, right? It's kind of like, okay, never mind, she did what she did, maybe it was right, it was wrong, I don't know, how can I change? Yeah. Anyway, I'm just giving this as an example where intellectually we take something in and then it becomes a part of us. So likewise with regard to things that are actually really in accordance with reality, intellectually, we may hear, for example, well, I can die any time. And then we make that part of our life. I can die any time. Am I ready? And before you know, you live your life as if you could die. And actually, we worry a lot less about the things we usually worry about. If you knew you were terminally sick, then we wouldn't worry about many of the things. You know, who cares I get a raise? Salary raise. Who cares my house is bigger than my neighbor, right? Who cares I get to see the new movie? It's like certain things that we, become less important. Okay, anyway. So here's how this just talks about the importance of study and of course also the importance of meditation. So, meditation. What is meditation? So this here mentions meditation. Wait, let me just see. So this speaks about meditation. What is meditation? Why is it important? We have a very funny idea about meditation in the West. But not just we in the West, Tibetans have too, when they first hear about it. The Tibetan word meditation really just means to accustom, familiarize oneself. To familiarize oneself with something. Now, there are different ways of familiarizing oneself. Familiarizing what? Of course, the mind. And familiarizing it in a positive way. That's seen as important. So you can familiarize yourself with how to rob a bank, but that's not meditation in the Buddhist sense. No. You're trying to familiarize yourself with constructive states of mind. Now, one way of familiarizing your mind, you can familiarize your mind by quietening it. Because right now, our mind is very, very full. Okay? It is full in generally, because like I said earlier, we very much focus on external things that we believe bring us happiness. So there's always some content, there's always some object. We're thinking of the future, to plan ahead, to make sure everything comes the way we want. We reminiscent about the past, what happened before. We worry about the future in a more negative sense. We're worried about that. We try to plan ahead. We think of the past. We're so busy. And the thing is, like, if you think of your consciousness, and I like to use an example, I've used it during my last classes too, but I've used it slightly differently. Think of your consciousness like a movie projector. And in a movie projector, you have white light. You have this very bright light, right? A movie projector. So not the digital ones you get nowadays, but the old ones in a movie theater when you have these rolls of film, if you have to put there. So the white light is our awareness. And then the film is our tendencies, is part of our brain, you know, the brain that is responsible. It's our body, basically, which is responsible for the sense inputs that we get. You know, it's responsible for seeing shape and color and so forth. So the film provides the forms. The light shines through the film itself, and then it projects pictures on a screen, right? Okay. So the white light is the awareness, just being aware, being conscious. And then the film is individually very different for all of us. It's the different objects that appear. But we get very immersed in the movie. We're not aware that this actually doesn't exist there objectively. It seems to be so real. So our mind and its object, there is the awareness and there's the object. But we get so sucked in the object. The object's only there because of external causes and conditions. And the awareness, which is aware not really of the external objects. We're not really aware of the external things because this cup is over there and my awareness is over here. This cup only appears to my mind, right? There's just an appearance of the cup. I said earlier on that scientists nowadays have come to see this idea. So previously there was the sense there is an objective world, but even Schrödinger, has everyone heard of Schrödinger, the physicist, the Austrian physicist? He did the double slit experiment and the Schrödinger's cat and so forth. He's a very famous Austrian physicist. Anyway, so Schrödinger said, I don't have the quote here with me, but he said something to the effect that we believe the external phenomena are over there, but it's actually whatever exists, whatever we perceive is just appearances to the mind. There's nothing really, there's nothing other than mind stuff. There is no actual, we don't really get in touch with the external world. So it's just mind stuff, everything is just mental. So therefore, when we say we get immersed in the movie is not really there. It's not like this reality. I mean, the movie is there, but the point is that this reality there's no mountain, there is no real, see? So what appears to us is not really what's out there. We don't really know what's out there. Light frequencies, yes, okay, we can say that. Even the atoms we think are so solid. It's 99.99999% space. Seems very solid, but it isn't really solid. And we think it can be located in a certain place. Not even that we can do. I mean, if you talk to physicists, they cannot really locate the electrons. It's very difficult. It's impossible. They talk about just a potential existence. They cannot really. It's like a fuzzy, kind of hazy, in the sense that there's something there, but they can't really locate it. So what we think is so solid and substantial and easy to point at really is just an illusion. Okay? So therefore, the point is that we perceive all these objects, but they don't really exist the way they appear to us. They don't exist out there, but we get so absorbed in them. So through meditation, through stabilizing meditation, as it's called, we can learn to understand that there's just awareness of different content, of different objects, right? And that these objects, they just pop up, these appearances, so we stop believing in their reality. It doesn't mean they're not there. Of course they're there, but they're not as solid and as objective as they seem. They're not separate from our consciousness. Exactly. They're not separate from our mind. We are creating them to some degree. Okay? So understanding that is one first step, and to do this is by engaging in stabilizing meditation. So that's seen as very important, to do stabilizing meditation by just focusing on the mind, or just focusing on, the breathing, for example. And then as you quieten the mind, then you are able to slow down this process of constant objects popping up and being sucked into the objects, but rather become more aware of the consciousness and how these objects are just appearances to the mind. So that's very helpful. It's helpful also to be more concentrated. For whatever you do, you become more concentrated. But to have less of a sense that there's this objective reality over there. You get to know your mind better. But that's not the only type of meditation. There's also what is called analytical meditation. Now, some people don't like analytical meditation for several reasons. There's some people, they don't like this meditation. One reason why they don't like it is they feel, well, I think all day long, and my mind is so distracted, and I'm so, stressed out. If even in meditation I'm analyzing, I'm just adding to my stress. And some people, they also really like the stabilizing meditation because, they quieten the mind and they feel much happier, and right away the mind gets attached to a pleasant kind of feeling. So they like this feeling of calmness. They don't want to do the other meditation. Okay? So it's basically just another type of attachment that arises now for this mental state. That's a problem. Why? Because analytical meditation, why is it so important? You see, let's take an example, an analogy. This is also one of my teachers who just taught. He gave this analogy. He says, for example, let's say you have a fear of a snake underneath your bed, a deadly snake underneath your bed. So you have fear of that. Okay. So what is the best thing to do in that situation? To calm the mind and just focus on the breathing? Yeah, right? So to calm the mind and to focus on your breathing, you may forget about the fear for some time. But what is the best way to overcome it is to analyze whether it actually is a snake, right? To really analyze. So to use your examination, your examining mind to really check. So in that moment you may focus, if that's appropriate, so keep your mind focused so you can analyze appropriately and you're not totally distracted by looking at the butterfly outside of the window. So it's beneficial to have some concentration there, and it may help temporarily to reduce the fear, but in the end you have to look underneath the bed. So likewise, from a Buddhist point of view, the main reason for all our problems is that we perceive a self which can actually not exist. I said we are slave to a self, and by saying it better be there, I've already implied, well, actually that type of self, the way we perceive it, doesn't exist. So how can we find whether that self is there or not? Not by just focusing on the breath or by focusing on something else. No. And that couldn't be helpful as a kind of creating the cooperative condition to make the analysis more effective, but we need to analyze. If it's really there, where is it? Right? And this is not just true for the self, how the self exists. Of course, when we talk about our misperception of the self being the root cause of all our other afflictive states, well, the misperception of the self gives rise to anger, gives rise to attachment, gives rise to jealousy, and so forth. We can also temporarily just try and work with our anger, for example, or we can work with our attachment. But again, by just focusing on the anger? Well, yeah, it may go away. Yes, it probably will go away in that moment. But we can actually use analysis in a way such that anger will no longer arise. That even in the future, certain situations won't make us angry. So in other words, we understand the disadvantages of anger. We analyze how it arises, what are the causes and conditions, how it is not rooted in reality, etc. So in that way, we can actually avoid the arising of anger. Okay, so this is where analytical meditation comes in, which is also seen as very important. It's almost like this watch is jumping and mine is 2. One day it's 10:30 and I've spoken for 2 minutes and it's 11.
Relative.
Very relative, yeah, here time is more relative. Okay, anyway, it's 11 o'clock now, so let's come together again after the short break. At 11:30. Do you need half an hour?
No.
You don't need half an hour? Pardon? 20 minutes? Do you need half an hour?
20 past 11 will come here, we'll be back by 11:30.
Yeah.